The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Test.
Hello. You can use. You can hear me through here. Good enough. So I guess it's gonna be the webcam. Hello everyone. Sorry about that. There's always a glitch when you go live. Welcome to the Extracting Value series webinar. Today we'll be talking about the latest release, TopoDOT 2019.2. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. If you guys wanna share with us a little bit more about where you're joining us from, you can go ahead and write it on the chat. We always love to know about who's joining us here on this series. Today, I'm going to be presenting this release. My name is Jennifer Triana. I'm the Software Processing Manager here at TopoDOT. And with me, I have Alex, our software developer, and Mike Cook, Senior Applications Engineer, doing some of the demonstrations. Mauri, our senior developer, is going to be answering some questions in the background. So if you want to know something and you want to write it on the chat, and we will reply right there and then. But we will also read some of these questions at the end and discuss them openly, okay? So today's webinar is going to be on version 2019.2. So first of all, we wanted to bring to your attention that we implemented a new naming convention from this release on. This new version naming convention basically will let you know of the year of the release and the number of the release for that year. And that way you will know if you need to update an older version. It'll be a little bit more intuitive. Next year when we release again, it'll be something like 2020.1. So just so you it makes sense for everything. All the new information about this release, all the new features, enhancements, and bug fixes are available on the changelog on the wiki manual, so you can refer to that if we didn't cover any of those changes. And just want to make sure too that everybody knows that this is a release only for the TopoDOT 64-bit version, the Connect Edition platforms version. Unfortunately, since MicroStation B8i is a 32 application, it's too limited for us to create some of the tools in this release. So we suggest upgrading to Connect when possible. If you are installing this version, you need MicroStation Update 7 or newer. And that might be different for other Connect platforms, but the latest version for MicroStation at least is 13. Some of the tools that we will be demonstrating are just going to quickly discuss them, and then we'll go through the demonstrations. So first, we'll talk about the block tiling or other data management tools like the block or grid tiling for UAV and airborne data. We'll talk also about some cleaning up tools for tiling and the image merger. So all of these tools are going to help you improve your project and organize your project data for TopoDOT. Moreover, we're going to be discussing some of the updates of the flat asset identification tool. If you're new to this tool, you can go back to our previous webinar, or there are some tutorial videos, but basically this tool, you can quickly extract pin markings that are within an identifiable intensity range of the data. And normally you would need to identify the assets, and it can take between 1 to 3 clicks to identify the asset for the tool to automatically determine what kind of symbol it needs to be placed. But now Alex is going to show you how this tool is now automatic, and how you can also save some time in this process by using cells that are similar enough to the pin marking, and use them as a template, and vice versa, use the template as quote unquote the cell or symbol to be placed. Okay, moving on. Okay, I forgot to click here. There you go. And after that, Mike will demonstrate the newest addition to the data analysis menu, the cross-slope analysis tool. This can be used to calculate cross-slope measurements from extracted line work spanning multiple lanes, and creating a report and exporting this report of the results. Additionally, he'll also demonstrate the measurements by cross-section tool to manually create measurements anywhere here. So those are two new tools that are being requested quite often, and this is something that it's very exciting for our data analysis menu. He'll also show you about how this tool fixed the problem with the MicroStation Update 13 to display the taskbar V8i style and the ribbon at the same time without having to do any workarounds. And he'll just show you how this looks like on Update 13. There are some other changes that we won't be demonstrating, but it's worth mentioning. So one is the new redesigned TopoCloud menu. It's a little bit more user-friendly, and it's got some new options, such as the multi-thread option that you see here on the screen, and basically you can turn it on from the settings menu. And basically it allows, it's a download option to download multiple pieces of the same file in parallel. This can improve download speed significantly in some cases. And from our testing with Azure Storage, we have seen download speeds go from 8 megabytes per second to 30 megabytes per second when this option is enabled. Okay. Some new display modes have been added to the display modes option, and this one is using the color contours, hybrid, intensity, and elevation hybrid with the intensity. So you can now use the combination of those two display modes in one. One other tool that was added to this version is the Shape Along Elements tool. And sometimes in your deliverables, you're specified to create shapes to show the paint stripes instead of just one line that signifies or represents the paint stripe. So now when you extract those paint stripes, we can create the shapes around the paint stripes. So that'll be useful if you must display it this way. And the speed advisory analysis also got some updates. It has an automatic detection of arcs and transitions, and that are it also can be used on rail. So some of the updates for this tool. So basically, just make sure that you install the latest version when possible. It could be directly done on TopoDOT or from the university page downloads area, or from the email that we sent you earlier. So just basically, if you have access to the university, if you don't, please sign up. You should see the downloads area right there. Or from TopoDOT, just click on check updates. It's also available in the splash screen when you open TopoDOT. So having said that, let's go ahead and go into the demonstrations, and hope that this goes quickly. All right, so I'm gonna go first here. All right, so I have TopoDOT here going on, and I wanna demonstrate a little bit about the block tiling. So the new tool here is going to be the, let me go ahead and bring an aerial picture really quick of the site, and let's just focus on just an area here. And I'll bring that aerial. So this is easy to identify the area that you want to tile. But if you don't have the coordinate system identified, then you can still do it based on the file itself. So there are two modes for this generate tile grid from either from the region, from an area that you select, or from a file. So if I do generate grid from region, I still need to specify the size of the grid. In this case, I have a 500 by 500 feet area, and this box will show me how large my grid is going to be and how many boxes are going to be there, rows and columns, and then it'll create these tiles for me. So this is more of what we in the industry refer to blocks, as they don't have a specific direction, not like when we tile for mobile data where you have a center line or something like that. This is more about creating just rows and columns of blocks, but we call it grid here in TopoDOT. And if you prefer to do it from a file, you can just go ahead and say generate tile from grid tiles from file. Select the tile that you want to use, and let's say we go here and we select that, select the folder, and select the size again, and we'll just go process, and this will create our tiles based on the file boundaries, basically. So you don't have to wonder where you need to create your tiles. So either method will create these shapes, and you can still modify them however you need. The next tool that I wanted to demonstrate is going to be these tile editing. So if for example, you have an intersection and you have some crossing, some overlapping tiles like this, you can now use these tile modification for merging selecting tiles to edit some of these tiles that we've had here crossing over. So for example, I select those tiles there in the intersection, and I can say merge selected tiles, and that'll create just one big tile that won't have any overlapping. So just, we want to avoid any overlapping on tiles or any gaps between the tiles so that you don't duplicate or dismiss any data when you tile. So this will be a great help for these areas with intersecting tiles. Lastly, I wanted to point out another tool called within the image browser. It's called the Merge TopoDOT image projects. And this is very helpful for those using mobile data that with multiple passes or multiple cameras. And if your software creates multiple IPRJs, then this tool will merge or consolidate all of those files into one IPRJ that you can load every time, and you don't have to worry so much about where opening each individual IPRJ on its own. So these, you just basically have to do it once, but you can do it once per project and still share it with anybody else using this data, and it'll just be one file. So basically you just add all of your IPRJ files as necessary, and then you can specify maybe if you have them all in one folder, instead of having to select each IPRJ, you can just select the images folder, and it'll find all the IPRJs. That's going to be an even easier function. And you can edit which files you bring in and whatnot, and just export a merge project. And that's it. So this image project, and that's it. So next time you can just open that image project that you created, and you don't have to import each individual file. So load project. It's not created yet. But anyway, this is how it would work. So let us know if you have any questions about these tools. For right now, let me see. Are there any questions here, Maudi?
No questions yet.
Okay, awesome. All right, I'm gonna pass it on to Mike. I'm sorry, Alex, for him to do. And I don't know which one is Alex, though.
Then the order was me and then Alex. Is that okay?
Okay, fine, no problem. Let me know if this is you, because I don't think the names have been changed. Did I?
How's that?
There you go. There you go, Mike. You can go ahead.
Okay. All right, so this will be short and sweet. I'm going to show you two tools. Jen mentioned the cross slope tool, which will be the second tool that I'm going to show you. The first tool that I want to show you, though, is a quick little measurement by cross-section option. So you can find that, up in the analysis tab here. Just activate it. Okay. Now the goal of this tool is literally just to use it to measure anywhere you want. Application currently, ADA ramps. You want nice dense data, you want to be able to see it, so RGB or intensity, but if it's nice and dense, you kind of know where you're measuring. But let's go ahead and use it. So in order to snap to the data, hold control as always. We'll get a little green circle. Okay, and then it's going to give you a dynamic reading. Okay, so I'm not actually snapping into the data just yet, but it is still sampling as I hold control. Okay, you're going to get a cross-section view as well. Okay, you have the option to do like distance, angle, percent grade, change in the sample size. If you wanted to snap into existing line work, you can also do that. So let's say you have somebody had extracted, the geometry on the ramp. You can actually snap into the element and also mix in sampling to the data. Okay. It's a little hard to see, so I'm going to zoom in on this, but you can kind of mix the two together. So either snap into existing line work altogether, or use both sampling techniques. Now, one more example before I move on. Let's say you get like proposed work or something like that, and they just want to know where my tieback points are, or where I can tie into the existing ramp is at 2%. So they say, okay, we're going to be raising the curb. Here's the proposed. You go ahead and activate the tool, click in, okay, to that location, and then you can just use the control option to determine, okay, how far back do I need to go in order to hit that 2%. And I know it's hard to see for you guys, but you know, this is kind of the idea on how you would use this tool. Okay, that way you know your tieback points way back here. So you could probably actually work with you know, this segment here and just rip up in between. Okay, so with that tool out of the way, let's move on to the main tool for this webinar here. All right, to gain access to this tool, it's in the same location. It's going to be the cross slope one, not the previous grade tool. They are similar, however, this newer tool is going to be driven by extracted line work. Okay, so we're no longer going to be sampling the data. We want to make sure that your line work has been dropped, or not dropped, but you know, extracted and checked before running this tool. That way you don't have to check, like, you know, sampling and make sure you didn't drop off into like a drainage feature or a, you know, low point or something like that. So typically you'll use a combination of tools to extract like your paint stripe lines. You know, I got my barrier lines in here, a couple of edge of pavement lines. Okay. I'm not going to demonstrate how to get that information. I'm going to assume that you guys know how to do that. And then also too, you want some form of a guideline or alignment line. You can reference this in and then merge it in to your drawing to use it. Just make sure that the elevation of this line is relatively, you know, within the vicinity of the data. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, we don't want like a negative 1,000 difference from our data or from the actual line work itself. And you shouldn't experience any problems if you have that set up like that. So let's hide this. Okay. First step, you're going to set up your primary and secondary lines. And to put this simple, your primary lines are basically, you're always going to be measuring across this. Okay. Your secondary lines, these are going to be sometimes measured to, sometimes it's not going to be measured to. And that is based off of your advanced settings, which I'll just refer to as your gap settings from here on out. All right, so I have my paint stripe lines as my primary, and I got my edge of pavements as my secondary. These, you know, these could be shoulder lines too. Step 2, create your thresholds. You could double click on the colors to, or these little dots here to change the color. So if you want to change the color, you can double click on it. If you want to get rid of something, you can always just middle click on it to reset it up. If you want to add a value, just add a color. Okay, type in your threshold value and then specify your color, and you could build your little graphical list here. And this is just going to colorize the graphics that are dropped or drawn for us in a second. Get your alignment line. Okay, you could specify where you want to start and stop. Okay, so if you want to start at a specific location, you can, you know, specify where that is and where to stop. Step size, pretty straightforward, left and right. If you want to just do like the, you know, westbound or eastbound side, you can, you know, enter zeros for one of these. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and hit process. See what it's doing for us. So it's going to graphically build that information for us, and then it's also going to create an Excel because I have that selected in the advanced tab. I'll let this build. The Excel will take a little bit longer to build if you are using it, but we're going to be getting lane line information as well as stationing information, and for each one of those, you're going to get a width and a slope value. Okay, so we're keeping track of the lanes, not necessarily saying that this is the lane on the road. This could be lane 1, which could be your shoulder. And we'll take a look at that. All right, so once that's done being built, you'll see that you have graphical information. And we're usually going from a guideline out. So you'll see lane 1, 2, and so on. And then when we come over here, we'll see 6, 7, and 8, and so on. So we're basically going from the inside out. And then that way you can kind of coordinate with your Excel which lane is which. Okay, and then obviously the stationing is even simpler. Station 1 or 0, and so on. 10, and I want to at a 10-foot interval, so you can kind of keep these synced together with your alignment line or guideline. I would recommend, if you're using alignment line, to always start at a whole number, or like, as an example, start off at like 800 and go to like 1200, and keep a a nice step size that will allow you to sync up with that, like 10 or 25 or something like that. Just to clarify the gap settings here, so for the primary lane lines, we are always going to be measuring between them, except for an internal threshold of about 1 foot. Actually, I think it's 1 foot exactly, so you'll end up with no measurements for very small distances. However, for the auxiliary to the primary, this will depend on these gap values here. So if, let's say my edge of pavement gets too close to my paint stripe line, it will ignore that value. And basically the main reason why we did this is if I come over here, let's take a look at our data. You might not always have something like this. This is just a nice example to demonstrate why you don't want to measure across maybe an edge of pavement, okay, because you have like a high side and a low side. So the idea is you'd have a paint stripe line on this side and an edge of pavement or shoulder line on this side that it will not measure in between because it's smaller than 3 units, okay? However, if we had our edge of pavement or shoulder line over here, we'll have 2 auxiliary lines to measure with, and it does exceed our 3, so it will produce a measurement for us, okay? And then the maximum gap, that's really if you're doing, maybe like ditches or something like that, or maybe you just want the shoulder slopes. So you'll have like a shoulder slope on this side, and you'll have a shoulder slope on this side, but you don't really want to do lane lines. You'll specify a maximum. Say, okay, ignore anything that's more than 25 units or something like that. So that's basically this tool in a nutshell. I'll go ahead and end it here and pass things off to Alex, and then we'll open things up. We'll open up questions
Before switching over to Alex, Mike, there was a quick question with that toolbox you have at the bottom, the point cloud snapping. Can you show how to activate that?
Sure. So that will be up in your settings tab, point cloud snapping, and then just open as toolbox, and it'll probably just get thrown in like this, and then you can just kind of dock it in there. So there's in the past you could do long or a hold right click or long right click to get into your snap mode settings. But this is a nice and quick, easy way if you're doing a lot of snapping to the point cloud. It's kind of nice to, let's say I want to do an average, and I want to do 1 unit, and I want to draw a line and snap in here, and then you go somewhere else and you want to change it up. Let's do a high side now. So that's kind of the demonstration of that. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. All right, Alex, I'll transition it over to you.
Yeah, Mike, I think you were going to show task navigation stuff.
Oh, okay, good point. I'm not eating up too much time, am I? Okay. So sometimes people gotta tell me I'm eating up too much time, but okay. So with the update 13, so some of you may have noticed going from 12 to 13, you kind of lose your taskbar. So originally, you would set it up with the MS task navigation configuration variable. Well, now in 13, that's no longer the case. What you'll want to do is basically have your workflow set to task navigation, and then in there you'll see this VDI task theme option, which will allow you to display this. Now our latest update takes care of using the ribbon and the taskbar at the same time. If you do not have an updated version of TopoDOT, you'll notice that if you try to use the taskbar and then try to use the ribbon with TopoDOT, you'll end up losing the taskbar and it will switch workflows on you and it will seem a little confusing. So for those of you who like the taskbar, just launch TopoDOT and just make sure you're in task navigation and you have this VDI task theme enabled.
All right, great. So great feedback about this tool. And we're going to now switch it over to Alex so he can show us the latest updates on the flat asset identification tool.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Can you see my screen now? Yeah, oh, good. Okay. So let me start with showing existing options that before the release. So the first option is by 3 clicks or by 3 points, and this option is very easy. You click 3 times, you specify the bounds where to look for the particular asset, and you let it go, and it will search through the library and pick the best one. Then second option is to use just the guideline, and it's basically 2 clicks, and then again it will scroll down your library sorry, and pick the best possible asset representing that point cloud data. Now this third option is using guideline. It's basically single click option, and it's essentially doing the same thing and just picking up the right representation for the asset. Now what's new about this tool is auto option. But for auto option, you'll have to limit your data to only visible intensity range. You'll have to have your stripes and your assets, flat assets visible. So something like this. And the auto asset will require you to have selected 2 boundaries, 2 guidelines. Basically, once you have 2 guidelines selected, it will go in between and find the areas of interest and place the corresponding cell. And it looks like it's working. And let's say I have a really long running segment. I don't want to be clicking a lot of times. I can just click auto. So this way it will kind of save you a lot of time. And let it run. Just a sec. Okay, there you go. Everything is between the lines was extracted, and yep, that's about it for this auto option. Now, what also new with this tool is that you can rename. You can make some changes to your templates. Basically here, first thing, you can rename a category. Let's say you don't want to call it main. Let's say you want to call it arrows. You can do that now. It will change to arrows. Now, let's say I want to change something with my template. I can change the name of the template. For example, I can set an offset. Let's say it's not matching data. I can make an offset. I can change the name, as I said, and I can move it to a different category, and I can also rename a category here if I want to. And also I can change the cell that this template is mapped to, and I can change the additional angle. Now, that's it about naming changes. Now let's say I want to map my, let's say I start from scratch, and let's say I want to map this region to a cell. And let's say I already have existing cell library, and in my cell library I already have the cell that looks very similar to the data I'm trying to map. So in this case, what I can do, I can place my cell from a cell library, and I can go into the tool where I would add a new template. I'll say get select line, and now I can select the cell I just placed from my cell library, and I click get selected element, and I will accept it as an element. So it will, you will not have to draw a shape by hand like you used to before this update. And then here you can select the same thing. So now you basically will map to what, like cell will map to a cell basically. So once this data is found, this cell will be placed. And this is one way of doing this. Then there's a second way. Let's say I don't have a cell library, and okay, let's say I already mapped one. So let's say I don't have a cell library, and I don't have any templates, and I don't have no cells. And let's say I just want to use, and I draw shape. This is a shape element. I draw shape around my element, and let's say I want to use this as my final result. So what I can do, I can come in here and say, okay, add one, get selected element, and then here I don't have any cells, but I have this checkbox which allows me to use template as a cell. So now I give it a name, and I give it a category, and save. Okay, now I have, and it will be green because it doesn't have any cell associated with it, but it's just going to use itself once it finds the data. And I think that's pretty much it. Probably one more thing to keep in mind, that if you don't have any cell libraries and you want to pass on this information to somebody else on your team, you will have to look into a different folder, because if you want to pass this information, those cells, to somebody else, those templates, there's a TopoDOT data flat asset folder where all the templates are stored. So for example, by default, if you have a cell library, it will be named by your cell library. But if you don't have any cell libraries, the folder will be called your DGN, with your DGN name. So here's paint marking instruction, paint marking instruction, DGN. So that's where my category 1, demo 1 template will be stored. So if you want to pass this information, you'll have to pass this folder to another computer and set it into the same directory. Okay.
All right, great job, you guys. Okay, so we have some questions here specifically for this tool. Let's see. Oh, I guess it's just really nice feedback. Randy Allen says the flat asset identification tool works very well. Thank you. All right, so here's another question from Wendang in China. The auto option will extract different assets in the same time? Yes. So it was kind of hard to see because there was a lot of it going on at the same time, but it just basically, when you select them, two paint stripes or two lines that will bound the areas to be extracted, it will just basically go through the entire segment and extract all the lines automatically. So yeah, you don't have to identify them individually. And how if there are more different kinds of sign, and it doesn't matter what kind of sign it is. So it could be, you know, one it could be an arrow, the next one could be text, the next one could be a bicycle shape. It doesn't matter as long as everything is already being identified in your tool. So basically you have a template and a cell assigned for that particular asset. So you need to have that ready before you run the tool itself. But for the most part, if you have those templates and cells assigned, then you can run the automatic tool properly.
I can show it very quick if you have
Sure.
time. So, for example, in this before this intersection, I have like two different types. If I look, if I change my mode to auto, and I will see it's going to pick up the corresponding cell for you.
Correct. There you go.
So that's an example.
And somebody asked Bella, yes, do you have to create the cell library first for extraction? So Alex kind of explained that you don't, that you can create the templates and use them as the shape that is going to be placed if you don't have a cell library. So I guess that's it as far as question goes for this tool. There were some other comments about the previous tool, the cross slope analysis, and somebody asked if, let's see, Mustafa asked if we can use a starting station that is not 0, and yes, I think Mike mentioned that just to make sure that everybody knows. You can use any value you'd like. And Daniel Clark from California asked if we use this cross-slope analysis uses only the line work and not the point cloud, and that's correct. So you would need to extract the line work in order to run the tool, and it would only use the line work to make the analysis, so it doesn't actually sample the data at all. All right. Mauri, do you see any other questions? I haven't.
The Mustafa had asked if it makes sense to share the templates for the auto asset tool with everybody, but from what I understand, different regions of the world and even different states have different symbols on the ground. So while we might have these templates that work for this particular project, I don't think it makes sense to share these templates for somebody else when it's not going to work on their project. So hopefully that answers that.
Yeah, and with the new way of mapping, it shouldn't take a long time to map. I don't know, 10 most popular assets. It shouldn't take more than 10 minutes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for your time, and I think this concludes our webinar. This will be posted on our webinars page as soon as it's processed. You will also get an email with the recording. And if you know somebody that didn't attend or couldn't attend the webinar, they will also get that video just for your information. So there will be also a survey at the end of when we stop the webinar. We would appreciate if you fill it out. This is going to give us a little bit more insight on what you will want to see next. We are preparing a couple more webinars for maybe December or in January. So having any feedback on what you'd like to see more about really helps in planning these webinars for you. All right, if you have any further questions, please reach us at support@TopoDOT.com, or you can always give us a call, our Orlando office, 407-248-0160. Thank you. Bye-bye.